Welcome to a place where family secrets don't stay hidden, where every smile has a shadow and every vow carries a price. Here, the perfect wedding isn't about love, it's about illusions ready to crack. One innocent whisper can tear open a world of deceit, and what lies beneath polished tables isn't just laughter, but the unforgivable sins no one dares to speak aloud. Sisters once bound by blood find themselves divided, loyalty shredded by betrayal that cuts deeper than any knife. Behind the mask of a devoted husband lies a darkness that turns love into a weapon and trust into a cruel game. And when betrayal finally steps into the light, forgiveness dies, replaced by a fire that will burn through every lie until nothing is left but truth and vengeance. If you're ready to uncover the stories no one wants told, you've come to the right place. The chandeliers glowed above, scattering light across the ballroom, as if even the stars had been invited to witness the perfection of the evening. Music drifted gently, laughter rolled through the air, and the scent of roses clung to every breath. It was the kind of wedding people dream about, flawless, elegant, untouched by any shadow. Yet perfection has a way of cutting sharper than glass, because sometimes the brighter the light, the darker the secrets it hides. Eyes traced every detail, the satin gowns, the polished silver, the sparkle of champagne and crystal flutes. Smiles painted on faces looked genuine enough, but there was something in the way certain glances lingered too long, the way laughter seemed too forced. It felt as if the room itself was holding its breath, guarding truths that no one dared to speak aloud. A celebration this beautiful could only exist if no one pulled at the threads, if everyone pretended not to notice the lies woven into its fabric. The toasts began, one after another, each dripping with affection and promises of everlasting happiness. Glasses clinked, hands clapped, and yet behind the polished speeches, the silence was deafening, because beneath every word hung the weight of what was unspoken, and the knowledge that if the truth ever clawed its way to the surface, everything would shatter. Eyes darted toward him, the husband who wore his suit like armor, smiling as though nothing in the world could break his composure. The way he placed his hand on a back that wasn't his wife's told another story entirely. In that moment, it became clear how much of life is built on illusions. Families gather to celebrate love, yet they carry in their pockets the sharp edges of secrets no one wants to bleed from. The dance floor filled with bodies swaying, spinning to the rhythm of joy, but each step felt like a dance around betrayal. Every spin, every dip, every embrace carried the shadow of something unsaid, something that should never be happening in the glow of so much supposed happiness. The perfect wedding was nothing but a mask, a carefully painted picture to shield the family name, to make the world believe in a fairy tale. Yet the cracks were there, small, silent fractures only visible to the eyes that had been searching for them. Every cheer and every laugh felt like a blade, cutting deeper into the pretense that loyalty still existed. And while the night carried on, the weight of his secrets pressed harder against the fragile illusion. The truth was there, lurking, hidden just beneath the surface, waiting for the one moment when it could no longer be contained. Perfection had never felt so dangerous. The music was still playing when the tug on the arm came, small fingers gripping tighter than expected. The child's eyes were wide, carrying a seriousness far beyond his years, and his whisper cut straight through the laughter and chatter. "Aunt, we need to go now." The words didn't fit the celebration, didn't belong in the glittering room filled with champagne and polished smiles. They carried urgency, fear, and something that made the heart stumble before the mind could catch up. Following his lead felt strange, weaving through guests too caught up in their own performances to notice the quiet drama unfolding just beyond their polished shoes. The child's hand pulled toward the table draped in white linen, its corners brushing the floor, hiding what lay beneath. Kneeling down brought a rush of unease, and in the dim space under that carefully decorated world, the illusion broke wide open. There, hidden from the glowing chandeliers and the roar of laughter, was the kind of betrayal no one prepares to see. The man who had sworn vows, who had spoken of loyalty and love, was tangled in shadows with someone who didn't belong to him. Hands where they shouldn't be, lips whispering words meant to stay sacred. It was raw and ugly, stripped of any excuse, and yet performed so carelessly in a place where children played tag and families shared bread. The shock wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It spread silently like poison in the blood, twisting every memory of devotion into mockery. The child's voice, pure and unfiltered, had dragged deceit into the open, and innocence had done what suspicion alone could never achieve. The perfect night was no longer about roses and music. It became the stage where betrayal dared to sit in the front row, watching without shame. Standing up felt heavier than expected, as though gravity itself knew the weight of the secret now carried. Every glance across the room burned with new meaning. The laughter of others felt cruel, the clinking glasses unbearable. And there he was, rising from beneath the table with a straightened collar, and a smile rehearsed so well it almost fooled the room. Almost, the child's eyes lingered, confused yet certain, as if he too understood the gravity of what he had revealed. His innocence had forced the truth into daylight, a truth that no longer had the luxury of shadows. And in that moment, vengeance began not with fire or fury, but with the calm realization that silence would no longer be protection. The illusion had shattered, and nothing could piece it back together again. The table was dressed in silk, its edges sweeping the floor like a bride's gown, hiding everything it was never meant to reveal. From above, it looked like nothing more than elegance, a place for champagne glasses, scattered rose petals, and folded napkins arranged with precision. But beneath, where no one was supposed to look, the truth had carved itself into the shadows. It wasn't the child's whisper this time, nor a suspicious glance across the room, but the stillness under that fabric that drew attention. A quiet shuffle, a movement too intimate to belong in the middle of a family gathering. Leaning down turned the world upside down, because under the tablecloth wasn't the forgotten shoes of tired guests or children hiding from the noise. It was a hand, familiar and shameful, sliding across skin that wasn't meant to be touched. There was no mistaking it. His hand, his wedding band glinting faintly in the dim light, a cruel reminder of the promises once spoken in front of witnesses who believed in love. The sight was enough to hollow out every memory built over the years. Late nights of whispered secrets, mornings of gentle words, all poisoned by the proof lying beneath polished linens. It was the rawest form of betrayal, the kind no excuse could soften. The woman beside him stifled a laugh, her lips pressed against his ear in a way that mocked the vows he had once taken. The intimacy wasn't hidden out of fear, but rather arrogance, the kind of arrogance that believed no one would ever dare to look too closely. And maybe that was the cruelest part, that while families toasted joy above the table, betrayal writhed shamelessly below it, hidden in plain sight. Every sound from the ballroom became unbearable. The music felt like a cover-up, the laughter like knives pressed into already torn flesh. Each clink of glass was a celebration of something that no longer existed. It wasn't just unfaithfulness. It was audacity. It was cruelty. It was an unforgivable act performed at a wedding where family was supposed to mean everything. Rage didn't come in fire, but in cold waves that numbed the body while sharpening the mind. Revenge didn't form in screams or scenes, but in the quiet decision that this sin would not remain buried beneath a tablecloth. No, it would be dragged into the open, exposed for exactly what it was. He rose from beneath the fabric, adjusting his suit as though nothing had happened, carrying a smile rehearsed well enough to fool the room. But the truth had already been seen, and there was no turning away. What lay under the table was not just a moment of weakness. It was the death of loyalty, the birth of vengeance. Nothing about him would ever be hidden again. The whispers had already begun to move through the family like smoke, curling into corners where no light reached, choking out the sweetness of the night. What was once laughter now carried an edge, and every smile seemed sharpened with suspicion. Sisters bound by childhood secrets and the kind of love that once felt unbreakable. suddenly stood on either side of a battlefield that no one had seen coming. It should have been impossible. Blood is supposed to be thicker than betrayal, thicker than pride, but loyalty bends when poisoned by love for the wrong person. She chose him, whether it was out of desire, recklessness, or something far darker. The choice was made, and it tore through the bond like a blade pressed against flesh. The man who had stood at the center of every promise had managed to wedge himself between two sisters, his betrayal slicing a family into pieces. The war didn't roar, it whispered. A glance held too long, a silence stretched too far, a toast delivered with words that meant one thing on the surface but another beneath. Family dinners turned into negotiations, every gathering soaked in tension no one dared to name. Loyalty was tested with every breath, and suddenly blood itself felt thinner than the lies dripping from his mouth. What made it worse wasn't just the affair, it was the arrogance of believing it could stay hidden. As though the walls of the family home hadn't heard the stolen laughter, as though the air itself hadn't carried their secrets into the wrong ears. Trust crumbled slowly, but once the foundation gave way, there was no saving what had been built. Sisters now faced each other not as allies but as rivals, each carrying the weight of choices that could never be undone. Anger burned, but beneath it was grief. Grief for the childhood shared, for the bond once thought unbreakable, for the safety of knowing that family could be trusted. He had ruined more than vows. He had turned blood into a weapon, left scars that no apology could erase. The worst part was seeing her defend him, watching her wear guilt like a crown, as if betrayal was something noble when wrapped in silence. The family's fragile unity began to fracture. Conversations turned into accusations, gatherings into scenes no one wanted to witness. What was once a celebration of love became a silent war zone, where every word was loaded, every smile a mask, every silence a battle strategy. And all of it, every tear, every crack in the bloodline, traced back to the moment he chose disloyalty over devotion. The war had no victors, only survivors. The mask he wore was flawless, crafted with years of careful charm and well-rehearsed gestures. To the outside world, he was the perfect husband, the man who could light up a room with a smile, who spoke with devotion that sounded almost poetic, who played the role of protector and provider so convincingly that no one dared question it. But masks always crack, and when they do, the truth beneath is far more monstrous than anyone can prepare for. It didn't begin with the affair. That was only the evidence, the tangible betrayal that couldn't be denied. The true darkness had been there all along, hidden behind affectionate words and promises whispered in the quiet of night. Every vow now felt like a weapon sharpened against the very person it was meant to protect. Love wasn't love at all. It was control, manipulation wrapped in tenderness so deceptive that even the closest ones never saw it coming. The way he looked across the room, smiling as if nothing had shattered, revealed everything. That grin wasn't a mask of shame. It was arrogance, the confidence of a man who believed he could do anything, say anything, take anything, and still walk away untouchable. Trust had been nothing but a cruel joke to him, a game where loyalty meant nothing and hearts were just pieces to be played. The realization struck with brutal clarity. The marriage had never been built on love, only on the illusion of it. Every gesture that once brought comfort now carried the weight of lies. Every shared secret became a dagger twisted with the knowledge that nothing had been sacred to him. The betrayal wasn't simply physical. It was spiritual, emotional, total. His mask shattered in stages, first beneath that table, then in the silence that followed, and finally in the way he dared to look into eyes that once adored him without a flicker of remorse. The man once trusted with dreams had turned them into ashes, and the person once believed to be safe beside had been standing next to a stranger all along. Family saw him as a charming guest at the wedding, someone who blended into the laughter and warmth. But behind the scenes, behind the curtains of smiles and celebration, he was a storm tearing everything apart. Sisters divided, innocence stolen, and a home fractured, all while he stood at the center, adjusting his tie as if nothing could touch him. The cruelty wasn't only in the betrayal itself, but in his indifference to the destruction it caused. Love, trust, family. He wore them all like masks to suit the occasion, discarding each one the moment it no longer served him. But masks, once broken, can never be worn again. Betrayal doesn't simply wound, it transforms. Once the truth clawed its way into daylight, the person who stood there wasn't the same anymore. Forgiveness, once a possibility, dissolved like paper in water, leaving behind only something sharper, colder, more dangerous. What replaced it wasn't chaos, but a fire carefully contained, burning not in wild fury, but with deliberate calculation. The plan began in silence. Words were no longer wasted on arguments or tears, because tears had already been spent, and arguments had already been buried under excuses. This wasn't about salvaging love or trying to hold onto something broken. It was about stripping away the lies and exposing every secret that had been hidden behind those perfect smiles. He believed the mask still held, that the role he played in front of others was enough to protect him. That arrogance became the very weapon used against him. Every detail of his betrayal was gathered piece by piece. Messages hidden behind passcodes, whispered phone calls taken just out of sight, careless slips in his stories when he thought no one was listening. Each fragment became part of a puzzle, and when the pieces finally fit together, the picture was undeniable. It wasn't enough to know, the truth had to be shown. Not just to him, but to everyone who had been fooled by his charm, everyone who believed in the perfect husband who never really existed. The family he had torn apart deserved to see the destruction he had caused, the mask ripped away so completely that not even he could hide from it. The wedding that had begun as a symbol of unity became the stage for his undoing. Evidence slipped like poison into conversations, photographs laid bare in the right hands, secrets whispered at the perfect moments. Every lie he had ever told began to unravel, each one dragging him deeper into the trap he had created for himself. There was no screaming, no public scene that could be dismissed as overreaction. Just truth, cold, undeniable, and damning. It spread like wildfire, leaving no corner untouched. Sisters who once defended him turned away in disgust. Family members who once praised his loyalty stared with open contempt. The empire he built on lies crumbled before his eyes, and for once, he couldn't hide behind charm or silence. Vengeance wasn't about watching him suffer. It was about reclaiming power, about proving that betrayal doesn't get the last word. Every step forward was a reckoning, a reminder that no matter how carefully lies are woven, truth always finds its way through the cracks. And when it was done, when every mask had been shattered and every secret dragged into the light, the fire finally cooled. What remained wasn't forgiveness, but freedom. You've seen how illusions shatter, how whispers unravel secrets, and how betrayal can fracture even the strongest of families. Masks break, loyalties divide, and what's left is the reckoning no one can escape. If these stories gripped you, if every twist left you breathless, then don't just leave in silence, join this journey. Hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you never miss the next chapter of hidden betrayals, raw emotions, and shocking revelations. Until next time, remember, some truths may hide in shadows, but here they always find the light.